Muzzle tov, I'm Brendan, that's Tim, and this is the ever lovely Chelsea. You're watching Life on Film, and today we're going to be discussing the movies of Stephen King and the culture of life.
Andy came to Shawshank Prison in 1947.
Why'd you do it?
I didn't, since you asked.
You gonna fit right in.
I must admit, I didn't think much of Andy first time I laid eyes on him. He had a quiet way about him, a walk and a talk that just wasn't normal around here.
Now, some of you out there in internet land might be a little bit surprised by today's topic, Stephen King and the culture of life. Can those two things go together? Most people, when they think about Stephen King, they think about horror films, Carrie, Cujo, Christine, etc., etc., etc. But what a lot of people don't realise is that Stephen King isn't just a one-trick pony. He has contributed a lot of really important work, written work that has eventually gone on to become films, very famous films in fact, that you might not even realise were written by Stephen King. Things like Stand By Me, things like The Green Mile, Apt Pupil, Running Man, one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's biggest films, and probably one of the biggest films of all time as far as popularity is the movie The Shawshank Redemption. And not a lot of people realise that The Shawshank Redemption is a short story that was written by Stephen King. So team, have either of you got a favourite Stephen King movie? Chelsea, let's start with you. Probably what? I'm going to guess Shawshank, maybe?
Yeah, totally Shawshank. Yeah. I've only recently really been educated in Stephen King films anyway, so like you say, I'm one of these people that think, what's Stephen King got to do with it?
Yeah. What did you think of Shawshank?
I really enjoyed it, yeah. It's one that was more accessible to me, I guess, being a bit of a horror movie phobic. And so, I found that it was really good, and it shows the kind of difference between the culture of death and the culture of life in the prison environment.
Yeah, it's a fantastic film, and it really primarily deals with the issue of hope. And of course that's interesting because the original title of the short story was Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, but an alternate title was Hope Springs Eternal, and that was the central message that Stephen King was trying to get across. It's an interesting film. It's a real paradox that it didn't do too well in the box office, but it's one of the top-selling DVD home movies of all time.
It doesn't look at abortion, doesn't look at euthanasia, but it is profoundly about a culture of death and someone who brings the culture of life into that culture, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a general principle, isn't it, that he's going into a prison environment, which is a culture of death, and by escaping that and transforming it, he's turning it into a culture of life just by his own actions.
There are places in the world that aren't made out of stone. There's something inside that they can't touch.
What are you talking about?
Hope.
Let me tell you something, my friend. Hope is a dangerous thing.
In this prison, man's dignity has been torn away. The prisoners are treated as subhuman. They're abused. They're sexualized. They're utilised for the benefit of other people, and that of course leads to despair and hopelessness among many of them. And when Andy Dufresne enters the prison, he retains his dignity as a human being. He embraces beauty and he shares that. There's a beautiful scene in the film where he manages to get a hold of the intercom system, and he uses it to play a portion of a famous opera, and the singing and the narrative over the top is that that even though no one seemed to know what the words were, they could feel and receive the beauty that transcended language, that transcended culture, and it just came through in that song. And it gave me hope. And of course the warden reacts very violently and squishes that and puts Andy in solitary confinement as a result. So you see sort of the reactive nature, the way the world reacts when it is confronted with beauty and dignity, and a lot of the time it's quite violent.
Andy Dufresne in this film is a classic example of what it means and what we should be if we want to be truly countercultural. Like, he doesn't just think about his own escape. He could have thought about his own escape, bided his time, got out of the jail and gone. But he doesn't. He is obviously progressing towards a good outcome for himself and an escape, but at the same time, he deliberately sets about transforming this culture, inmate by inmate by inmate. He brings education into it. He even outreaches to the guards and to the warden, the most corrupt and most evil within, or deemed to be within the society, in an attempt to try and, you sort of get that sense he's trying to change the culture. He's not just thinking about himself.
Yeah, and it should give hope to us and to all pro-lifers really, because it's so easy to see the culture that's going on around us and to be really despairing of it, that we're kind of in World War, it's too hard to see any positives in it, yet through the little actions that we do, you can actually make a huge difference.
Now listen, everybody. We are experiencing some kind of disaster.
No, it's the end of days. Oh my God.
Something in the mist! Shut the doors! Shut the doors!
Let's talk about, I suppose you could call it the cousin. The cousin movie, the parallel, the exact opposite, but exploring the same question of hope and despair and everything else. The Mist is about a group of people stuck in a convenience store, surrounded by this mist. There's creatures in the mist, and it's deadly, you can't go outside. And it's about how this little society starts to give in to basically despair, and they start to lose hope. And a group of them manage to flee the store in a vehicle. They run out of gas, they're still in the mist, and what happens? Despair overtakes them, and they think the only way out is to take their own lives.
Both take the issue of hope and come out with entirely different outcomes. The people in the Mist, rather opposite to Andy Dufresne, they lose hope completely and utterly and decide that there is a fate worse than death, essentially, and that's what they're experiencing, and that they'd rather kill themselves violently and of course kill children as well in order to avoid that fate worse than death. It's like they both approach hope from completely different angles.
So it seems to me there's a big parallel issue for the pro-life movement here. You've got a group of people in a car who give into fear and to despair and who panic and who think that the only way out is to take their own lives. Well, what's the obvious parallel?
Euthanasia, which is becoming more of an issue over the coming years, particularly in New Zealand. I think they've got bills and things going up for it, that people are constantly fighting for, that they don't want to see suffering, so it's better to end your life now while you're at a good point than to carry on with the pain.
Who knows how far this mist has spread?
It could be the whole world for all we know. It wouldn't make us any less dead.
Daddy, don't go. If something happens, cut and run.
The stunning conclusion to this film is that they don't have enough bullets, so the father shoots everyone else. They all agree this is how it's going to go, and then the agreement is he'll get out of the car and hopefully some creature will take him. He gets out of the vehicle. The mist begins to clear. No creature takes him. The mist begins to clear in part, and through come the army and the survivors and the mop-up teams. And if only they'd just held on and not given into despair. There was no need for them to take their lives because what had happened was they'd blown everything out of proportion because of fear and despair.
Well, yeah, and of course the fog sort of metaphorical is for that sort of fog that tends to surround people in a lot of these end-of-life situations. They're in a tremendous amount of pain. They create a sort of mental fog, but also they may feel that they are a burden or that they are somehow negatively affecting their family or society, and so they're given every reason to despair, and that's really the biggest issue.
Let's go back to Shawshank. We can't rate every movie, but let's talk about Shawshank. Let's give it a 5 stars out of 5 rating. Chelsea, what do you say for Shawshank?
I'd say probably about a 3, but I'd definitely say that talking about all this stuff has made me want to go back and revisit these things and to kind of see more Stephen King and kind of find out more about it.
Just stay away from Cujo. Tim?
I actually I think it's a 5-star film, to be honest. It's got a great script, it's got great characterizations, great cinematography and great performances, so I'd say it's a 5-star film for me.
Yeah, I tend to agree actually. I think I have to Chelsea, I have to go with 5 stars for Shawshank. I'm one of those people who thinks that this is probably one of the best films of all time. And I mean, in the previous episode I talked about how I love Gattaca, but Shawshank for me is it's a whole nother level of filmmaking. I think I have to give it 5 stars. So, we're going to say 2-1 on this one. So, folks, there you go. 2-1. The votes are cast. We're going to give this one 5 stars. Chelsea going to give it 3. But once she watches it again, she'll come back and she'll give it 5 like we did.
Too naive.
She doesn't know what she's talking about. So you should just disregard anything she said. So, 5 stars. We're going to give this. Chelsea gives it 3, but she'll give it more later. I guess the one thing I would say for those who haven't seen Shawshank Redemption yet, just be aware. Someone asked me recently, do you think it's a family movie night film? And I said probably not for younger viewers. There's a couple of things in that. There's a couple of moments of strong language, and of course it's dealing with prison life and prison culture, so there's a couple of scenes There is nothing particularly graphic that I can remember off the top of my head, but there's certainly stuff, there's content that wouldn't be suitable for younger viewers, so just be aware of that. But other than that, it's a really great film about hope and clinging desperately to the culture of life and transforming a culture of death from inside out by being really countercultural. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on Life on Film.
I guess it comes down to a simple choice, really. Get busy living, or get busy dying.
Get busy living, or get busy dying. That's damn right.